Yeah. Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today. I hope everyone's having a great time at BB Dev Days. While we're doing introductions, if you all could just let me know in the chat where you're from, what organization you're from, and what your role is there. I'm Jonathan Wilkinson. I'm a customer success manager here at Blackbaud, and I have the pleasure to introduce the folks from Sentinel Consulting. But also, if you could just let me know that you can hear me in the chat, because I just want to make sure I'm not talking to myself here. Just give me a thumbs up. Yes, awesome. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. All right, let me go ahead and introduce our wonderful participants today, or presenters today, I should say. Thank you for joining our session today. This session is called Level Up Streamlining Daily Gift Notifications with Power Automate. Today, our presenters will introduce you to Power Automate and help you create a daily gift log. Power Automate is the ideal tool for turning mundane tasks into set it and forget it tasks. Sending an email to users about gift records added to RENXT yesterday is a great way to get started on your Power Automate journey. Let's find you more time in your day so you can get back to your mission. If you have any questions during the session, if you could go over to that Q&A tab and put in your questions there, that just makes it a little bit easier for us to manage those questions. And again, if you could just let us know where you're from, where you're located in the chat, just so we know who else is joining us today. Also, so I want to introduce our speakers first. So Lucy Ruiz is owner and founder of Sentinel Consulting, a consulting firm that focuses on fundraising operations using the perspective of ongoing soft training, scalable and efficient processes, and technology to elevate an organization's mission. Lucy has worked in the nonprofit space for 30 years, initially as a fundraiser within an independent school. This is followed by a decade of working for Blackbaud, that's us, as a Razor's Edge consultant, working all over North America. It was during this time that Lucy became convinced that operational excellence is the foundation to an organization's success. Like any successful team, operational excellence does not occur overnight. However, it does occur where an organization strives to do more each and every day. So let me next introduce our other speaker. We have Amir. Amir Sahani is a data analyst at Sentinel Consulting with over 15 years experience in transforming complex data sets to actionable insights. Prior to joining Sentinel, he built data warehouses and developed business intelligence, BI, you hear it called, reports for Samsung, where he established best practices for reporting, data governance, and Python-driven analytics. At BB DevDays 2025, Amir is eager to help nonprofit staff to take on Power BI and Power Automate. Amir loves to share practical support for building efficient workflows and data visualizations that support fundraising teams. And with that, I'm going to turn over to Lucy and Amir. Again, thank you so much for everyone joining, and thank you to Lucy and Amir for presenting today at BB Dev Days.
Hi, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We really are excited about how turning data into insights makes such a big difference. And I would say, I know Jonathan asked people to tell us where they're from. I also want to hear a little bit about what are some of those overwhelming tasks that you folks have in your day. Many of us spend hours trying to figure stuff out. And I know what we hear from our clients most often is those monthly reports. I've got to create them, and it takes me 2 days to create these reports. And when I hear that, it usually means it's time for Power BI. So tell us what you're doing, because we always get our best ideas from folks like you. So Jonathan already explained who we are, and we're big fans of making sure that the operational side of the house is as streamlined as possible, because we find that definitely streamlined operations help streamline organizations. And that's what we want, is streamlined, rinse and repeat. All right, so now we're going to jump right into things, and we are going to be talking about our LAI and how we have created Impact Edge using LAI and some other tools. So as you can see, we've got our standard LAI report, constituent ID, constituent names, linkage ability and interest scores. And that's how we're used to seeing things, right? Tabular data is generally where most people think of reports. Not a bad thing. Reporting is good. But what we see on the right is where BI really, really shines in this process. And as you can see, based on some calculations and formulas, which we'll talk about a little bit later, now you're able to see, hey, who is bubbling up to the top of the food chain or the donor prospect world, and who we should be looking at. So anyone in this top top right-hand side of the screen, so the top right-hand quadrant, that's where you're really, really going to see the people that, hey, are they on our radar already or are they not? And I love this example because it shows us that we've got a pretty healthy pipeline or an ability to build a pipeline, because that middle is equally as healthy. And the bigger the bubbles, the more people we have in the different quadrants. So this is how Power BI really shines, as I said, is taking that tabular report, which is good, but our brains can't process that, into something a little bit more visually appealing. And I know for most, I'm one of those people, but I am definitely a visual learner. Quick story about how this all came to be. This whole process, when we were working on this for one of our clients, came to be is like, we took this, but I was like, oh, how do we make this a little bit more manageable? How do we make it tangible? And I happened to be watching Moneyball on an airplane on the ride. I don't even know where we were going, but anyway, we're watching Moneyball, and it's all about how data makes a difference. And that was my click. It's like, we need to make this happen in Power BI. It's not enough to make this happen in a list to say, hey, this is helpful, but it was the visuals that really make a difference. So there's the one line that Jonah Hill says, we've got to think differently, and we've got to think differently about our data and how we digest it, because a picture truly is worth 1,000 words. So that was a little bit more long-winded than I intended to be, but yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we start. So we start by creating a scale, and we start with good old-fashioned spreadsheets of where this data is, right? So what kind of data do we have for the linkage piece? What do we have for ability? What do we have for interest? So our interest is our engagement. So we talk about, how is someone demonstrating their interest in your organization, right? And their engagement scores. Are they subscribing to your newsletter? Are they a recurring gift donor? Linkage is sort of like, what is their association and affiliation to your organization? What are their constituent codes? What are some of their rating codes? What are some of the notes in the system? So we take a vast array of data and we synthesize it, because that's really essentially what we're doing. We're taking all sorts of data. And for some of you bigger orgs that have tons of data, the more data you put into the grinder, the better the picture, right? Once again, for those of us who are visual learners, we're going to just go through what this workflow might look like. So we start off with the Razor's Edge. Then we talk about the Power BI connector. Then we use Power BI to move data into SharePoint and automate this process. Then we use the Power BI connector. Keep in mind, there's two connectors. For those of you who are new to the scene, we are going to be doing a little bit of this is what you need to know as a database administrator, those of us who are lower on the totem pole of learning this stuff, and I count myself in there. But then there's folks like Amir who are way above board. So he'll be speaking to those of you as well. So once we grab the connector for Power BI, we grab those files from SharePoint, grind it all together, and then that's where we start massaging the data and working through it. Then we can publish the data, create the visualizations, and then publish the data. So creating those beautiful pictures is sort of the easy part once you do the hard work. Any questions? I'm going to pause here before I jump right into things. Okay. All right, so what we're going to do, and I wanted to split this up for those DBAs out there in the room who might be joining us today, is I want to talk a little bit about what these workflows do. And in the case of this particular Power Automate workflow, the demonstration you see here, or the workflow you see here, is sort of repeated depending on the pretty much for all the different data elements within the Razor's Edge. Because the key thing is this data needs to reside in the Razor's Edge. It doesn't mean Power BI cannot take data from other systems, but it really, really shines when it comes to doing it within Power BI. When the data resides in RE, because then it's collectively sitting there. So we grab a list of GIFs. We're going to parse that JSON. For the longest time, I had no idea what a JSON was. If you ever wondered what a JSON was, that's that ugly text box. I'm always constantly referring to things in a way that I can understand it. So JSON, it just means a text box. It just means a text file. So we're parsing it so that we don't take everything from this file and only take, let's say, gift amounts or gift dates, depending on what you need. And then this little sort of loop in here is what helps you grab 5,000 bits of data at once and then come back. Once you've got your 5,000 data points, come back again. For most organizations, you will have to use a workflow like this because there is a limit of the number of calls that the connector, the Razor's Edge connector, will allow you to have, and 5,000 is that magic number. So you have to keep going back to the well. So if you've got a big database with millions of GIFs, you'll be running this loop a long time. And Amir, feel free to jump in whenever I'm not explaining things properly.
No, that's
all right. Now we're going to elevate it for those of you who are a little bit, advanced users, shall we say. I'll turn it over to Amir.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lucy. Thanks, Jonathan, for the introduction. I'm going to take a few minutes to walk you through the technical side of how it works. So I try to keep it simple and focus on the key parts. So the goal is to just show you how this process is set up behind the scene. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right, so we have this Power Automate workflow to extract information out of Razor's Edge and save it somewhere as CSV files on SharePoint. So we are going to take a look at the whole end-to-end workflow of creating this LAI dashboard in Power BI. So we probably need to develop a Power Automate workflow to extract information, save them on SharePoint, and this part of Power Automate is really simple and straightforward. We are not going to do complicated loops and calculations inside Power Automate because the sole purpose of this workflow is to just extract information out of Razor's Edge on a daily basis. So we have automation of getting these information and then saving them on SharePoint. Then these files are accessible in Power BI, and then we can do the calculation and actually the heavy lifting inside Power BI. But here we had another session talking about Power Automate, what are the triggers, actions, loops, and the other kind of things. So I'm not going to explain again all of these technical parts, but I'm going to show you one Power Automate pattern you will run into anytime you ask Razor's Edge NXT for more than 5,000 records. Blackbaud Sky API caps each call at 5,000 rows. So if you have 20,000 constituents or you have more than 50,000 GIF records, you need to batch the calls and append the results together and keep them somewhere in a variable. So the tools we will use or the action we are going to use are simple. We need an offset and limit API parameters to call the Sky API. We need a do until loop to keep the calling until no records are left. And also we need a variable, an array, to collect each batch and append those information inside every loop into that variable. So why is that so? Offset tells the API start at row 0. So we initialize this offset variable and we set the value at 0. So the offset tells the API start at row 0. And after each successful call, we will add batch size, which is 5,000, to the value of this offset. So the next call doesn't start from 0. It starts at the 5,000, then 10,000, and so on. So this is the whole purpose of having a do until loop inside Power Automate. Wrap your API call to get the gifts, to get the list of gifts inside a do until loop, then add a condition to your do until loop. The condition is that the length of the last response or the count of gifts for that specific API call is less than the offset or the batch size. So we have a limit of 5,000. We are getting 5,000 rows of information. We set offset, and after each loop, after successfully completing one loop, we increment the limit of 5,000 to the offset. So the next loop starts from the 5,000 rows. So inside the loop, you call this guy API with a limit of 5,000 and the offset. We append the response to the variable to actually have all information and all rows in one place, because you're not going to just lose them. If you don't keep them, they will disappear. And then we increment the offset by 5,000 and the next loop starts again. Okay, what is the result? When the loop exits, you have all information inside your variable. I'm going to give you some tips and tricks. Power Automate runs on Microsoft shared resources. So pulling 10 years of data, 1 million records, everything you have in your Razor's Edge, just in case, slows refresh and can hit the service limit. You will probably get an email from Microsoft that you're not allowed to use Power Automate anymore because you're abusing the resources. So always narrow down your information, use date filters. For example, if you are going to have a Power BI dashboard using the current fiscal year, don't request prior years. Don't request everything. A smaller payloads, faster loops. So that is all. It's very simple workflow. I just wanted to explain this do until loop because we are dealing with more than 5,000 gift records, but we don't have more than 5,000 constituents here. So it's a straightforward. It is then creating the CSV tables and save them on SharePoint. Lucy, go ahead.
Okay. All right. Can it share the video? Can it share? Do I have to share my screen or does it just show up, Jonathan?
Let me just.
Oh, can you do that? Oh, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oops.
Go ahead.
All right. We'll just go through that. All right. So we went through what, thanks, Amir, because definitely, hopefully that helped our more advanced users.
Yeah. Lucy, we have a question here.
Okay.
Larissa asks, please repeat the part if less than 5,000 parts. Okay. We have an offset and we have a do until loop. When you call the first Sky API inside your loop, the offset is 0. It means you are setting the parameters. When you call the Sky API, you are setting 2 parameters, limit, which is always 5,000. You are not changing that limit. And also you have an offset, which is a variable. We initialize that variable with 0. So the first loop gets information with a limit of 5,000, a batch of 5,000 that starts from row 0. At the end of that do until loop, you increment that offset variable by 5,000. So the next loop starts from the 5,000 row, and you keep going until you meet your condition. Your condition is that the count of gift should be less than your offset. So when your count of gifts for the last API call is less than 5,000, that is your last API call. And it just exits the loop and continues the workflow. Thanks, Lucy.
Yeah, no, thanks for that question, Larissa. That's helpful. All right, so we're now going to jump into the Power BI. So now we've extracted data. We're now ready to take all that data and put it into Power BI. Now, one of the things that I've learned with Amir's great tutelage is that Power Automate is a little bit like cutting with a dull knife. You can only sort of segment data based on the variables allowed. So, for example, you can't do really complex things like give me date ranges, or you can do either for or against, but you can't cut really deeply. So you're gonna get a better feel for that when we go through the calculated fields. So really brief overview on Power BI and how we do this. One of the big things about it is all the real work happens behind the scenes. Very much like when you create a graph in Excel, you have to run all of your calculations, and you have to clean up your data first before you can present that final pie chart or bar graph. So much like Excel, it allows you to do that. So, but unlike Excel, there's two elements called calculated fields and measures that work within, that are often used. And so calculated fields are often a piece of data that you're going to be calling upon over and over again. And so the example that I like to use is things like fiscal year. So if you're dividing up your data into fiscal year, it doesn't make any sense to create a formula to say, hey, calculate fiscal year every time you see a gift date, because that would slow things down incrementally. So what happens is you create a new column, and then you can say, okay, if the date ranges, if the months fall between this month and this month, they're part of this fiscal year. If they're part of this month or this month, or sorry, this year or this other year, then they're part of another fiscal year, and how you group them. So you have to group by month and by year. So that would be something that, because you're going to call upon that over and over again, that would be a calculated field. And measures are more like formulas. So when you're trying to calculate, like I like to think of it almost as mathematical equations. So anything you can add, divide, do any mathematical elements to, that's when you can use a formula. So that's sort of how I've sort of learned how to explain them and able to do that. So in the docs section, there is a list of sort of commonly used formulas for things such as fiscal years, dates. Amir, what else did we put in there in those calculations?
We are actually calculating linkage, recency, frequency, ability scores, like total giving and the other kind of things. All of these calculations are being handled using DAX formulas.
Correct. No, but of the elements we've provided, so the one that people love, like these DAX formulas can be very complex, especially the fiscal year one. We've provided a link of all of those so that you can just copy and paste it directly.
Oh yeah, that is the M code for just generating a date table. Yeah. So we have a date table including a unique list of all dates. So we have added a couple of columns. You can add a lot of columns like fiscal year, like year, month name, month number, and holidays. You can add anything you want.
So we've given that all to you, so feel free to grab that from the document section. So now that I've explained Power BI for DBAs, I'm going to turn it over to Amir to talk a little bit more about some of the calculations that we've run through in using this LAI calculation, because it's not just LAI. As you can tell, the more data you have, the more data, like the DAX measures created by Amir allow for that flexibility, because we do have some clients that are using, that have very, they have data points that are limited to certain areas, while other folks have more robust data points. So they could have external ratings from WealthPoint, from Donor Search or iWave, etc. So I'll turn it over to you, Amir.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Okay, we have already seen how Power Automate extracts data from Razor's Edge and drops CSV files into SharePoint. Now we are going to complete the loop and this workflow inside Power BI. We are going to load the raw data, shape it, apply any transformation, and then calculate linkage, ability, and interest scores. Each of these scores might have a couple of criteria. For example, you want to calculate interest. You can have a couple of criteria. It depends on your business logic and your preference. This is a sample dashboard. So for interest, we have incorporated recency and frequency to calculate interest score. For linkage, we are considering the constituent code. For example, if your organization is a college or a university, you can give a score of 5 to those who are alumni, or you can give a score of 4 to current parents or past parents. For the linkage, we have also considered event participation. So if your constituent is participating in the events, so it means that donor or that constituent has more linkage to your organization. So it depends on you and your business logic to develop these criteria. But here, to show you some samples, you can see that the data panel on the right side, we have gift table, we have constituent participation, event, constituent education, constituent code, and constituent. We have also a configuration table, which is for your advancement department to apply and configure the scores for each of the constituent codes or anything that you're using for any criteria. For example, if the constituent code is alumni, it gets a score of 2, 5, whatever. It depends on you. But what is the next step? In the constituent table, we are going to add 3 calculated columns first. That is the very first step. Those are very simple calculations. We are going to add total giving, which is a very simple calculation of sum of gift amounts. We are going to have another column, which is frequency, which is a count of gift IDs. And the last one is the last gift date. So it is basically the maximum of your gift date. So now we have, for each constituent, we have lifetime giving, dollar amount, giving frequency, number of times they have given, and also last gift date. What is the next step? We are going to develop a calculated table. And we are going to add a couple of calculated columns to this calculated table. So everything, all business logic and calculation is inside one table. You don't need to just look for them in all tables. You have put them all inside one table. So it's easy to understand and you can just grasp the whole idea. As you can see, we have a DAX measure right here to calculate a new table. It starts with a variable, which is a base table. It is basically your constituent table, but we are excluding the constituents who have never given. So we had a couple of constituents like this one that there's no gift record for these constituents. So we basically exclude these constituents and we return this table by adding some couple of columns. First, we start with interest score calculation. As I said, this interest score has two criteria. The first one is recency. The second one is frequency. Recency is straightforward. You are just calculating the difference between last gift date and today in month. If that value is less than a year or 12 months, you give a score of 5, which is maximum score, to that constituent. If it is less than 2 years or 24 months, that constituent gets 3, 2, and else they get a score of 1. And also we have frequency right here. What is this frequency? Let me just expand this calculation a little. We are dealing with a statistical distribution of constituents. So we have listed constituents and we have calculated frequency, giving frequency for each of them. Okay, so one of them has only given once, the other constituent has given more than 100 times. First, we rank these constituents, every donor, by giving frequency using this function, rank X function, over all constituents. So the lowest frequency rank 1, and the highest frequency ranks whatever, we have no idea, the maximum. Then we convert that ranking into deciles. So decile 10 is the maximum. It includes those people who have given most, so the highest frequency, and decile 1 only includes those donors that have given only once. So donors fall into buckets, 10 buckets from 0 to 9. Then at the last step, we are going to assign a score to these people. Since the maximum score is 5 and our decile is maximum 10 buckets, we simply just divide that decile by 2. So we will have a score of minimum 1 or minimum 0.5 and maximum of 5. So this is how you calculate frequency. And this frequency and recency actually create the interest score. And this is the same for criteria of total giving and linkage. So you have a calculated table which has a base constituent list, then you add your calculated columns and calculate each criteria that make up your LAI score. And now this is the result. For each of these constituents, you have LAI scores, and you make an average of these criteria. And you can create your visualization. You can see this table. Every constituent has a linkage score, an ability score, interest, and LAI score. Lucy, go ahead. You are mute, Lucy.
All right, I was bound to do that at some point.
Yeah.
Okay, can you share the slides?
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to be letting me share, so thank you, Amir. So I know for some of you, especially us DBA users, that was a lot of information, and probably some of it you were like, whoa, that went over my head. But the one thing I do want to stress is that a lot of this is far more doable than you actually may believe. Data is a journey, so it's never going to be static. I like to think of your data journey as being related to, you start off small and you incrementally get bigger. And the nice thing about using Power BI is that I call it almost like a gateway. The minute you start using it, the more you want to use it. So You might start off just using straight plugs and just the filters, which is fine, but it's all doable. So whether you've got a small, you're like, I just use RE for tax receipting. Fine. We use RE for a lot of stuff. Keep in mind, though, one of the things I do want to stress that I don't know if I stressed enough was that Power BI, because it can take data and has APIs for other data sets that you might have, your financial system, even if it's not a Blackbaud financial system. You didn't hear that, Jonathan. Maybe your financial aid information, maybe you've got your hospital foundation and other data resides in other parts of the institution. You can plug it into other elements. So the more data you have, the better off you'll be. So just keep at it is what I'm trying to say. So I like to say it's time for insight. And we've kind of nicknamed this package called Insight Edge. But after you grow beyond sort of the LAI, so now you've got people bubbling up to the surface and now you know who you should be talking to and I should be identifying, then you'll be able to put together this kind of information, this kind of chart here to really give you a sense of the funnel. So I've seen those funnels look really, really complex. But once again, our minds do not compute really large data sets in like spreadsheets with font 8. And who you are. Your orgs all do it. But this becomes a much more meaningful, impactful visualization. And more importantly, it helps you see where you could be lean and where the bottlenecks exist. So for example, and once again, this is all sample data, so this does not really exist. This demonstrates to us that, hey, you know what? Somewhere in identification, we're just not moving fast enough. But we've also got a lot of people in here and we're not moving fast enough in this negotiation stage, right? We're sort of toggling in here, we're getting stuck in here and not moving them to stewardship fast enough. Now, when we created this if we were creating this for a client, these declines, the nice thing about visualizations is that it makes you ask more questions, because then you're like, oh, what do you mean my declines are almost as big as my identified prospects? What's going on here? You can now take a look at it and say, okay, well, where are they dropping off? So you could create another visualization that tells you where in your pipeline they're dropping off. And to layer on top of that again, now you can say, now that they've given, this is how they're giving based on pledge information, all things being equal, and you don't do anything more, you can now forecast. At the highest rate, you'll be up at the top of the gray line. At the lowest level, you'll be at the bottom part of this gray line. And so this piece of data uses something called p-values. So Amir, do you want to give us a 2-second blurb about p-values?
Oh, yeah. Actually, p-value is just something about a statistical analysis. It's a fundamental concept in statistics to determine the significance of your results. So in a simple term, a p-value tells you how likely it is that your result happens by chance. Okay, so assuming that you have, for example, you have your gift records. So when you calculate your p-value, you're actually calculating that a gift amount, what is the percentage, how likely it is to happen to raise $10 million within 3 months. So you're considering a confidence level to just calculate this p-value. So you will have a range of gift amounts within 3 months with a confidence level of 95% that will happen. For example, you will sit between 14 million to 50 million within 3 months. So I don't know if I have explained it completely or not, but it is something, a statistical calculation to just understand how likely it is that your results happen. That's all.
Yeah. We have also done this for some folks when they're trying to figure out their pledges and their write-off ratios that your finance teams are always looking for. So that's another example of using that p-value in a different manner, but to sort of give you that information. But once again, a picture's worth 1,000 words. And then, so we've sort of gone through the layers, how do they bubble up as a prospect? Then how do they look in the funnel? How is it looking from a forecast perspective in terms of our pledges? And then in the last bit, you can have executive summaries that give you and feed information. Sort of, this is where your higher level folks are looking at it and they can really see trend lines. And just very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, and if you have questions, please put them in the chat. This is one of my favorite sort of elements that we put into some of our dashboards. This shows us that year over year how we're raising money, and most of us can look at this and go, okay, the dark blue line, this is our current fiscal year. Yeah, we started off a little lean, but we sort of met our stride in here about halfway through Q2, but now we're ahead of the game, right? But then you want to understand, why is it that you were ahead of the game? Like how far, like how much? These lines look pretty close. Is that really close? Well, if you look closer, now you can see down here on this bar graph, you were actually 56% lower. Now, had we seen that earlier in the year, we could have course corrected. And in this case, you can see that there was clearly some course correction because the negative percentages keep going down until you sort of break that break-even point in Q2, and then now you're ahead of the game. So having these at your fingertips elements, which are all visualizations within Power BI, can really make a difference and really, once again, show you that impact. And so they show you trends, they show you they really make things actionable. And I think that's what we're trying to extol on a lot of you folks, is that this stuff is very, very actionable when you see it there. So we really want to encourage you to dip your toe into that Power BI pond, lake, whatever you want to call it, and really start working with it. Should you have any questions, follow up, you can always reach us you can always email me directly. Amir is also Amir at Sentinel Consulting. Our website is sentinelconsulting.ca, and then our promo code for any services, etc., is that. But we love to help folks. So if you have any questions, please don't feel it's going to turn into a sales call. We're happy to help out. Oh, you're on mute, Jonathan.
I do that every day. You work with folks everywhere, not just in Canada, right?
Oh, funny you ask. We just opened up an office in LA, in Long Beach, so now we're officially on both sides of the border. So happy to serve our US clients. But yes, we work with clients on both sides of the border.
And I'm going to launch the survey right now. So thank you to both of our presenters. A fantastic presentation. Thanks to everyone who attended today and interacted. Really appreciate you being here. We've got about 2 minutes left. If you could just take a minute to fill out that survey, we'd love to get your feedback. We'd also love to hear what you might like to see next year for BB Dev Days. I'm sure all of you will be back next year. But if you've got any last minute questions, feel free to put them in the chat or in the Q&A. Because again, we've got about 2 minutes left. But thank you again to our presenters, and thank you to everyone.
I see one from GNL's there. Do you have anything to say about using a different p-value for business operations than you would, for example, medical research? I'm going to turn that over to Amir.
Oh, okay. So it becomes really, really technical. So if you mean another different p-values for medical researchers, because medical research is really sensitive and you put a lot of money into these kind of researches. So definitely your p-value should hit something like 99% level. So it depends on your business logic, your sector standard. So 95% p-value confidence level is something like standard everywhere, but it depends on your sector.
Thanks, everyone. I really, really hope you continue asking questions and really, get in there and start working with your data, because your data does hold a lot of information, more than you think.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you so much again, our presenters, and thank you for our attendees. Everyone have a great rest of the day, and have a great weekend. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.